Welcome, everybody. This is Jennifer Rigg with the Global Campaign for Education US. We are so delighted to welcome everyone to the Inclusive Education and Early Childhood Community of Practice meeting. We will talk towards the end about this exciting new opportunity to expand a bit to a learning community as well. We're grateful to our colleagues from the GCE Global Secretariat joining today. So please make sure to stay on for all of that exciting information. For all of you who have already joined, please be sure to introduce yourselves in the chat box. We'd love to hear from everybody. Please share your name, your organizational affiliation, if that's, and anything that's appropriate, and also where you're joining us from today. And we're really excited today, especially, to hear from just some fantastic presenters. This week in particular is Global Action Week for Education, or GAWE. And so happy GAWE, everybody. We know so much has already been happening, and we are really grateful to all of you. I also want to especially thank, and please join me in giving a Zoom round of applause, if you will, to our fantastic graduating students. We have so many amazing student fellows, leaders, student advocates that have just been doing fantastic work. And several are on this line organizing this discussion today. So we're immensely grateful to Annie Lynn, Karina Anton Lopez, Katie Luce, who just graduated. And also we want to really thank and congratulate Stephanie Pena. As you know, Stephanie's wonderfully been serving as the Inclusive Education Coordinator with GCE US, and is now working with HI, very excitingly, while she's concluding her doctorate. And so we're really thrilled that Stephanie could join today, even after traveling across countries. We all know how that is, and so we're grateful to all of you for being able to join today. I see the note from Federica that thank you so much, Federica, for joining. While everybody's getting settled and introducing themselves, Fede, would you like to share the great news about this upcoming COSP event? I'm so sorry I won't be able to be there in person, but we're excited to see that there will be a live stream UNTV option for people who can join who are not in New York. So absolutely, please, Fede, if you'd like to make that introduction, we would welcome that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the opportunity to make this announcement. So, yes, we're going to hold a side event on inclusive education. The title is Inclusive Education, an Imperative for Advancing Human Rights and Sustainable Development. You can find it on the COSP side events list on the COSP side events website. It's on Tuesday, 13th at 11:30 a.m. New York time in conference room 11. It's co-sponsored by many members who are co-signatories of the call to action that we released last year all together following the Transforming Education Summit. And it will be an opportunity to redistribute the call to action and discuss challenges faced by learners with disabilities and share lived experience of self-advocates and renew some commitments, both related to the call to action that I mentioned, and also in preparation for the 30th anniversary of the Salamanca Declaration next year. And as well as the coming SDG Summit and Summit for Futures. So as you said, Jennifer, the event will be live streamed on the UNTV. We don't have yet the precise link, but it will be available just a few days before. You can check on UNTV, conference room 11. and sign language interpretation and captioning will be provided.
Thank you so very much. We're grateful to you, Federica, and to all the organizers. And please continue to share that information across this list. And we will all help spread the word as well. And so we're really thrilled to welcome our fantastic presenters. The call to action that Federica just mentioned as well, we'll make sure to share in the chat box. We are very close to having over 200 organizations sign on. So please help us continue to spread the word on this really important disability inclusive education call to action, with thanks to everybody that has already joined in. And if you could share it with your networks and also with your partners, governments, foundations, donors, and if others would like to have a conversation for ways to implement the different aspects included in that call to action and incorporate it within their agency or organization. We're also all happy to help with that as well. So huge thanks to Inclusion International and to all colleagues advocating on that. And thanks everybody for joining in to introduce yourselves in the chat. The slides in full, thanks to Parina, are also available there for download if that's helpful, and we'll share all of this afterwards as well. And in terms of the full bios for our wonderful speakers, please make sure to take a look at the agenda that was shared and information that will be going into the chat. And we're really excited to have the chance to kick off hearing from the SDG 4 or Sustainable Development Group 4, which focuses on, Sustainable Development Goal 4, which focuses on education. So the SDG 4 Youth Network Inclusive Education Working Group has been doing fantastic work, and we're grateful to all of you. Many of you helped with this policy brief as they sought partnership and consultation on the different topics. And so please join us in welcoming Laeek Siddiqui, research scientist at the Center of Demography of Gender, International Institute for Population Sciences in India, and also representative of the SDG 4 Youth Network. And so with that, we're going to go to the next slide. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And we're so grateful to our first presenter. Over to you, Lee.
Okay, so I hope you are hearing me. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening from everyone from where you are. So my name is Laeek Ahemad Siddiqui. I'm research scientist in India. So we have published one research brief. This is leveraging the power of youth and promote inclusive education for children with disabilities on behalf of inclusive education group of the SDG4 Youth Network member. We are together 5 people. So I am presenting this policy brief behalf of this group. So please next slide, please. So I'll start with some introduction about how it started from. There's the first UN Convention on the Right of the Child 1989 forbids the discrimination. So what the UN says that as such children with disabilities worldwide are expected to have an environment that is non-discriminatory, inclusive, respect with the differences and accept them as a part of human diversity and provide with equal opportunity. But as a result, and we find that in historically, children with disabilities and many other learners have been marginalized and expelled from the school throughout the world. And this is why even UN Convention affirmed that the inclusive education is the responsibility of the government. But even though we found that low middle income countries especially have inclusive education policy in the places, but when it comes to financing and implementation of these, the policies are extremely piecemeal. Please next slide. So also when we start from with the disability, when it start from with, because the disability is often politically and socially invisible due to these four reasons. First is still the field of disability is struggling with a finite definition. The definition limitation is still struggling. So which, and also the misinformation and the misconception about the different type of disability worldwide. Even within that type of disability, we have an inequality in disabilities, and then also the very great point is the absence of standardized data collection methodology. If you find different kind of studies in the cross, you find a very different approach when it comes to the methodology, and which is why it is not unique, and which is why we not compare to the disability data to worldwide. And also availability of the good data on the children with disability, and this is why data on children with disability is mostly biased toward visible disability, which we see, whatever we see in terms of disability, that we count and we understand. And when we especially overlook the cognitive part and overlook the mental health issues. And as a result, we see that the globally in the recent study UNICEF document that 240 million children with disability they are there. Please next slide, please. So I'm not, so due to we have a time extension, so I'm not going to much statistics about. So what we have proposed that we are going to ahead. So please next slide, please, because these are the statistics, someone. So if we see that what are the primary reasons? So these are the primary cause of the school dropout among the children with disabilities of the worldwide. The first, lack of the qualified instructor. If you find that the base infrastructure, but you won't find the qualified instructor, because you need a qualified instructor for each different type of disabled children, and which is lacking. This is the great problem that especially the Asia Pacific and the low middle income countries have the lack of the problem. And also studies with the suitable disability responsive facilities, and also classroom management. If you find that there is a one instructor but 100 students are sitting in the same classroom with disabled and non-disabled, and this is the challenge especially. So they're sitting with the normal people, and they are not getting the specialized attentions, what a special attention, a special way of the teaching. And also accessibility and affordability, and also protection issues there also, and even the school related the gender-based violence is also is evident everywhere. And bullying with the culling, this is the very common problem, because so the peer groups, when they bullying with their name based on those certain type disability, so those children somehow demotivate to go to school continue, so they drop out also. And also discrimination and exploitation within the household, within the community, within the other places. Please next slide, please. These are the figures, so please we have, because we have also some the statistic from the UNICEF, so I'm not going to put out. So please next slide, please. So also, if we talk about the challenges that the children face in society and education, so so the stereotype is the last slide which I'm talking, the stereotype stigma, so those, because this can demotivate them to hinder them from the showing their full potential, and the capability. Disability related stereotype often lead people to believe that person with disability have a poor quality of life or the unhealthy due to their impairment, so which has somehow demotivated. And also if you check on the parental assistance, so some parenthood can be emotional, difficult, and the overwhelming experience, because these parents, it is important to know that some of the parents fail to recognize to their child disorder and disability, which further as a great cause of the dropout reason, and also it hinders the child development of the children. Also the communication, the barrier. If you see, for example, children with the hearing impairment may have difficulty to understanding the video lecture or the audio visual learning materials without subtitle or the manual interpretations, such as sign language. And also audio and children with the cognitive impairment may also have a difficulty to understanding the longer sentences and the technical word and the word with the multiple syllables. And so these are the very common problem and challenges that these people have said. And although lacks of the access the affordable of the conventional transport and further, you find there's a institution promote accessible school building and better trained teachers, but still you find disability may still struggle to get the school without transportation across the world. And the millions of the children with disability face this problem to challenge the walking or being carried to school for long distance or unsafe path of the road. So that is also a very great problem. Poor identification and the screening services, and identifying and the screening children with disabilities are also major concern, and screening procedures provide preliminary indications for the child disability, but children with disabilities are not identified until the upper, you can say, elementary classes or the even junior, and even some cases disability may not appear until the child is older. So this is also a very great things when if you identify a screen in the early age, it can provide to the tailored support for them, the families, and also to pros to the inclusive part of the education. So next slide, please. So if you talk about the COVID recently, even COVID took places, it also worsened the situations of the already limited budgeting for the children with disabilities, especially in the Asia Pacific region and Sub-Saharan also. But also the gender disparities also widen. So this is also very worried. So even 31% of the school children worldwide could not take advantage of the online classes just because they do not have access to internet. And if those who have, they are not able to grasp, they are not able to you can say they are not trained to acquire those knowledge in a way that digital provides. So next slide please. So what we talk about, what could be the key strategy to promote inclusive education for the children with disabilities. So next slide please. So we found that it is not solely responsibility of the government and institution, but also young people that we are advocating that those with disabilities also can also contribute to the promoted through within the social media campaign, that by sharing even with the disabilities people, by sharing their experience and observation about the current education system in their countries, as many people worldwide they are on the digital platform, sharing statements from these youth can increase recognitions and that reach institution in the government. And even street campaigning, it is also very effective for youth, including those who are disabled. Street campaigning is also most effective and the excellent way to make their voices heard. Street campaigning in the form of placards, testimonials, posters, and many more can done in front of public and their existence. And also, if you see about yeah, participate in the consultation, the main kind of discussion, so that also young people and can participate in consultation, the discussion about their needs in various ways, whether on-site or the online. Worldwide online dialogues continue. Youth can reach out to community leadership and local to national grassroots levels representative effort to the voices heard and to solicit support to the addressing their need with the different channel. And even the resources mobilization and budgets, so youth can also mobilize and fundraise and monitoring the existing policy what, and they can be part of the budgeting also to raise the fund for this, especially for this field. Next slide please. So coming to the recommendation, what we are recommending, so recommendations like this should be so this should be recommendation for the 2-3 pivots. Like the first with the school for the administration, those about the child, the teachers, and so for the caregiver, the parents and caregivers. So for the school and administration, there should be twin trick approach, which bigger twin trick approach to education that promotes mainstream education, inclusive strategies, while also providing the specialized support for the children with disabilities. And there should be flexible learning content and curriculum, provide efficient skills and professional development to teachers, because they will be most important in the schools, and adjust to the learning environment to meet the preferences of students or the children with disabilities, and to ensure accessibility through the provision of reasonable accommodations and the application to universal design for the learning approach. Next slide please. So governments and the national leaders should ensure that they implementing the updated policies and strategic action plans, and also the allocating budget for the education for the children with disability proper, and make sure that the budget should be utilized in a calendar year, and also proper monitoring and evaluation, and also establish a policy for the inclusive education in which children with disabilities are included in the mainstream educations. For the parents and caregivers, the first is for parents caregivers to identify the early the assessment of disability, which is the great thing. So learning difficulty in the children to mitigate their severity of the disability when they become older. And next slide please. So when it comes to policy implementation, the first with the Article 24 of the United Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities states that the parties recognize the right of persons with disability to education. But when in 1994, when Salamanca, World Conference took place in, so the core of this conference and the ethos of the conference, it come with the inclusion of the education. So earlier it was not. So they come with the inclusive education policy. Please. Next, please. So what we found that as a group of youth leader, what we found that what are the you can say drawback, or what is the missing in this policy break. We found that they do not highlight the role of youth and the young people, which is very important. Very important. because the youth can also, promote inclusive education in their communities, and lack of meaningful involvement of the youth and young people affect the operationalizations of the policies. And also we find the lack of emphasis on the how much money national budget should allocate for the inclusive educations. No intersectional approach to address the challenges affecting the access to inclusive education for all the children. And also we found that there is a collaboration with organizations of the person with disabilities was the lacking, and no clear indication for the monitoring and the evaluating effective implementation of the sustainable education policy at the national level and the community level. So next slide, please. So what we approaching, what we suggesting that I think there should be investments. First is the investment in the disability reaches. For the investment in disability, there should be provide more evidence based and disaggregated data. The information is the key decision making, planning, designing, monitoring, and adopting the education policies and the practices that are targeted disability education. So which is why we are more focused, and the first priority should be more and more scientific, empirical, based on research in terms of the disability. And also then capacity building for the youth to disability, because that can enrich their skills to the competency educate for the inclusive educations and the grassroots level, national levels, and the international levels, and strengthening the early detections which for the caregiver, the parents that can be identified in the early age for the disability, and training teachers to inclusive education and teacher training colleague to the teacher practices. And also we more focus wanted to that curriculum review to integrate inclusion, because we have found that a lack of your curriculum has not updated in many of the part of the world. So there was a very old curriculum. It should be inclusive. It should be more affordable, more inclusive approach to the for everyone. And also increase resources allocating to education and public education by national government. Some of the national governments overlook, so which is why we feel that it should be in the mainstream, and employing the multi-sectoral approach. What we're talking about, the multi-sectoral approach, there should be emphasis on the collaboration and the coordination among the Ministry of Education, working with the different stakeholder, media, parents, and the Ministry of Health, Education, Finance, Gender will also address the intersectional factor that can be compound discrimination with respect to the person with disability and education, and ensure this holistic approach are designed to the promote inclusive educations. Next slide, please. So what we see that as a youth is that we are overlooked. So which is why it should be so, because the role of youth are the very essential across the whole process due to the energy and the innovative thinking and the talent that the youth has today. And which is why we are more focused about, we are more emphasizing, and we're more advocating about the youth promotion. The inclusive education requires concerted effort and actions at all level of development. And this, which is therefore the voice of young people and the youth in their diversity must be centered in addressing environmental and the structural barriers affecting access to inclusive education, a person with disabilities, family, community, and institution at the national level. So with this, I would say thank you for everyone to listen me. If you have any doubt, thank you for my sides. You can get this policy brief on the online. I will share in the link side in the chat box.
Thank you so very much. Yeah, we're grateful to you and the entire group and network for all of your work. For everybody joining, the full policy brief is linked in the agenda today and also in the chat box. And you can find that on the SDG4 Knowledge Hub as well. And this is so important. This topic is absolutely critical. Laeek, one thing we'd like to ask you as well is, like you mentioned, there's still, we're working together, but I think coming off of the Transforming Education Summit and various youth summits over the past year, but still there's much more work to do. So how can organizations, governments, and all entities better engage youth with disabilities in the process of promoting inclusive education for children and youth with disabilities? We know that this is an area that many organizations have flagged, and many youth leaders similarly have said, look, there's just much more to be done, going beyond something that just involves inviting a young person to speak for a minute or two, right? But to truly be there at those decision-making tables. What would you suggest as a good place for organizations to start. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jennifer, what we've really felt in the field of disability, why this area is lagging when we talk about the inclusive education. The first, there is a lack of evident data first, and which is why we had empirical based data whatever we have, but it is not, you cannot compare the data that WHO have done a study in the south of an African country. You cannot compare those data with the Asian, because there are certain type of different disability and there are different differences. And so it's a definition. The first thing is the definitional challenges. So first we have to work about the identify of the definition of the disability. And again, as a youth, if you say that there is a really important, there is a less funding, and also we have what we say that we have a policy on paper, but especially if you find that there is nothing going on the ground level, especially in the low middle income countries. There are government, they have a papers, there are people, but they are not working on. So which is why more and more children are dropping out. And so which is why there must be youth come in front of, and first that the social media platform, through social media approach, that they should not be ignored, they should not be discriminate those children who are disabled. Like if I talk about that example of the India, so initially we call it differently abled people, those who so when the government took place, they take the priority. We never make sure that you are differently able, you are more able. So we don't say they're differently able, you are more able. So which is why now they got some confidence. So you have to sit with them, you have to include everywhere. So youth only can, so because this is why the Salman Shah and the other policies which had, there was the lacking of the role of the youth. This is why youth should be come in front of that. Those are the youth who will include them, who will part of the school, they will not bully them, they will include them. So which is why youth should be in front of, and there should be more disability in research, and whatever the fund that allocate for the especially the disability educations, it should be utilized, because they should not be utilized. Most of the country they don't utilize, so it should be utilized, and it's the proper monitoring evaluation what we feel that. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so very much, and please continue the conversation in the chat box,
Sure.
because you raised such great points, and we know everybody has different experiences on those points as well. So please continue the ideas and the sharing. And again, we're so grateful to this wonderful team that developed this policy brief, and to everybody that has been involved in this process. Thank you very, very much. And that's a good transition to our next discussion topic. We're really excited to welcome Channy and Claire Brennan. Claire is a senior project management specialist with RTI, and Channy is a disability and social inclusion specialist with RTI and USAID. And we're thrilled that they're going to join us to present the launching of the Center for Thriving Children, and an activity in Cambodia focused on identification, referral, and support for children under the age of 5 with developmental delays and disabilities. We know, like we just heard, right, that it's so critical to be engaging young people with disabilities as early as possible, and especially before they reach school age. And so we're really grateful to our colleagues for their work, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks. Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. I'll try to be very brief to give Channy plenty of time to talk about his work in Cambodia. My name is Claire Brennan, and as Jennifer said, I work at RTI. I'm based in the US. And I'm going to talk quickly about the newly launched RTI Center for Thriving Children, which we just launched this spring. Next slide. So we call ourselves the Center for Thriving Children. It's important to know what we mean when we say thriving. For us, a child who is thriving is healthy and well-nourished. They're protected from harm. They are in responsive, caring relationships, and they enjoy opportunities to learn through play. So if you're familiar with the nurturing care framework, this probably rings some bells. And the nurturing care framework is the tool that we use to think about and guide our work in helping children reach their full potential. So the 5 components of nurturing care are all interrelated, and children can't truly thrive without all of them. So because of this, our work at the center needs to be multi-sectoral. The purpose of the center is to bring together people from, all across RTI and beyond who have expertise in these areas and more areas that impact child health and development. So for example, my background is in public health and family planning. Other experts involved with the center have education backgrounds, child psychologists, nutritionists, health system strengthening experts, and more. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a center, what do we do? Well, we focus on children from before birth, beginning with maternal health and well-being. We also respect cultural variation and integrate diverse perspectives on childhood, on parenting, and on how we can use nurturing care in different settings. The center convenes expertise in research and implementation from around the world, and we do our best to disseminate that learning about the different domains of nurturing care and beyond. So for example, we recently held our first public event, which included a panel of 3 experts implementing integrated early childhood activities in Cambodia, Rwanda, and in Poland with Ukrainian refugees. And we have more events coming up. We also collaborate with partners from around the world to promote locally led research, practice, and policy. We're currently implementing projects in early learning, maternal and child health, nutrition, and other areas. And we're conducting research, for example, on how to better support young children with disabilities and their caregivers. And we'll have a webinar on that coming out in the fall. So stay tuned. We also have a paper just published in Pediatrics about an ongoing longitudinal evaluation of our work in Cambodia. And you'll hear more about that work from Channy in just a moment. Next slide. So, of course, we know that we don't have all of the answers at the Center for Thriving Children. If you have ideas or thoughts or connections, motivations that can help move this field of children thriving forward, we would love to work with you and hear from you. Up on the screen, you have contact information, and I really encourage you to head to our website. You can sign up for our alerts and newsletters there, or you can contact me directly, Claire Brennan, or Catherine King directly as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Channy to talk about his work in Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So I would like to introduce about our activity in Cambodia. We call the Integrated Early Childhood and Development Activity. So I will briefly explain you about what we are doing, especially on the Tlou overview and key achievement. Next slide, please. So in Cambodia, we implement the integrated early childhood development activity as the integrated approach that we have involving from our partners as well as the partner from the government, especially the ministry. And it is the 5-year activity that we separated into 3 main cohorts. You can see in the map, we have cohort 1, cohort 2, and cohort 3, and some province that we work in Kampong Thom and Previher province. For some district, we are working for cohort 1. Some maybe work for cohort 2 and cohort 3 together. As you see in the illustration of the map. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, for this activity, we do as the integrated approach. So we have 3 main objectives. Objective 1, as you can see in the slide, we focusing on providing the nurturing care session, like Claire just mentioned about nurturing care framework. So we provide the nurturing care session to the caregiver for the children under 5. to change their behavior and the attitude toward taking care of their children, to make sure to improve the physical, cognitive, or social emotional development of the child, especially for those children under 5 years old. And we have another objective. For the objective 2, we focusing on nutrition. So we provide, like we do the MUA screening to identify those who have malnutrition, and then we support it by improve their nutrition to decrease stunting rate for our children in our target area. And related to objective 3, which is the objective that I am leading, it is focusing on providing supporting to children with development delay and disability, as Claire mentioned, and also Jennifer. So we would like to do with the children as early as possible. So we try to do the early detection and provide the early intervention to the children. So we're focusing on conducting child screening. After we identify them, then we refer them to receive the services. Then we strengthen those services to make sure that the service have a good quality and sustain for our identified children. So next slide, please. For early identification, we have our tool that we call a community-based development milestone assessment tool. It is the tool that will be used by our we call a frontline worker, which is the village health support group and child development leader in the community level. So as we know, in Cambodia, we have limited services that provide to children with disability. So in our cohort 1, we use the tool that called CDMAT P99. CBDMAT is the shortcut from the community development assessment tool. So for P99, it means that percentile of 99%. So this tool, we only identify those who have severe development delay and disability, because we have very shortage of service available. So we introduce the P99 first to ensure that we can identify those who have a profound need or who have a disability. So we do in 75 villages in our cohort 1. Then after we introduce this tool and we see the tool is effective, then we introduce another new tool called CBDMAT P75. That is more to identify more children, like we can find for those who have mild, moderate, and severe developmental delay and also disability. So we do this tool in 75 villages in our cohort 2, and we still continue to do the CBDMAT P99 in 100 villages in our cohort 2. So we pilot the new tool in the 75 villages. This because of we expected that while we using this tool, the number of identified children will be increased. Next slide, please. So to do this tool, we also provide, capacity building to our partner. I mentioned we have partnership with government and also others NGO partner. So we provide the capacity building to our government officer in subnational level. Those include the Ministry of Social Affairs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, health center staff as well. So we training 24 of them to become a master trainer. And then those 24 master trainer, they provide another training to our village health support group. I'm sorry I put in the shortcut because the data. and the child development leader, you can see in CDL. So we provide a training to those community people, 245 in cohort 1 and 310 in cohort 2. Next slide, please. And to make sure that they are, able to, use our tool effectively, so we have developed the training material. As you can see, we have the illustration to a sort of picture that is supported for those community people that may have difficult to understanding. So we try to make more illustration. We have the job aid, and we have the toolkit which is used to when they do the screening. And also we have like the video instruction to ensure that those people who are in the community level, they can use our tool effectively understand. So we use the QR code, as you can see in the slide, so that our VAG and CDL, they can just scan, then they can get all the training material and also the video instruction, which is support them while they are doing the screening. Next slide, please. So this is the data that we do in the cohort 1 and cohort 2. I forgot to mention, so for one cohort, we have about 15-month implementation. Then we move to another cohort, another 15 months in another district. So we screen more than, I can say 4,000 in cohort 1. And you can see we identify about 52 children. This because we use the P99, which is the tool that identify for those who have a severe delay or disability only. And while we introduce our new tool, you can see we just screening in our 2 province, in Kampong Thom and Previer province. It's just about 1,000 people, but you can see their number is high. That's why we introduce only 35 villages, because we want to make sure that after we identify those children, then we have ability to refer them, because the limited of the services in our country, especially for some specific type of disability. And we do the screening, we use our new tool. As you can see in the top picture, it is what we do in the cohort 1. So our VSAT, the Village Health Support Group, they use like the hard copy to screen the children. But in cohort 2, we integrate those tools into the digital platform that called ComCare app. So our health village support group, they use the tablet to screen the children. Next slide, please. After we identify our children, then we need to refer them to receive services. As I mentioned early on, we have limited of services, so we refer them to 3 areas: Onco Hospital for Children, All Ear Cambodia, and Safe Haven. That is our partnership. That they provide the pediatrics health care to our children, to screening for the hearing and screening for the eye or vision or something like that. So they are located a bit far from where the province that we are implemented. So, what we are doing, because we want our identified children to receive, so we support them for referral. But in our future intervention, we want to strengthen those services in our target province, in Kampong Thom Physical Rehabilitation Center, and also in the health center, to ensure that those children can get closer while they need the service supported. Next slide, please. After we refer them to receive service from our service provider, we also conduct another home intervention, that we have a home visit from our staff or village health support group. And also we have the home intervention from our interventionists, that they do some sort of family stimulation guide or therapy support with the caregiver. So they provide some education to the caregiver so that they can provide some basic therapy at home. Next slide, please. And another thing, we try to reduce the stigma among those children who have delay, developmental delay or disability, as we know that a stigma could be happen for those who after they are identified or having disability. So we do like we have a monthly peer support group meeting with the caregiver of the children who have development delay and disability. We form them a group, and then we do the monthly peer support group meeting, that we encourage them to share their experience, to share their challenging, and then find out the solution together. And another thing, we do the another community mobilization. It is a kind of mobilize activity at the community level by, we bring some of the commune people, include the chief of the commune or village, with some people in the community to visit one of our identified children, and then we discuss together with the caregiver and then find out what is their basic need. So as example, one children, they need like a sitting support. So then we try to find the existing, material or resource in their community, and some people in their village, they using, they bring their material or they support their labor to do those sitting support for the children. And that sitting support need to be, checked or verified by our specialist. We have the physiotherapy who need to make sure that the position or the length or the sitting support is corrected with the size of the children. Another thing, we do a community dialogue, which is conducted quarterly by engage people or officers from other relevant ministry. For example, when we are focusing on genders specific, then we we invite those officers from Ministry of Women Affairs, so that they sharing what their activity or their policy to support. And in case we talking about social insurance scheme, we invited the officer from Ministry of Social Affairs to introduce their program activity and what the eligible for receiving the government fund or something like that. Then we also invited people from community, including our caregiver who have children with development delay and disability. So sometimes they ask the question, do they are eligible to receive services or something? So we connecting together from those who providing service and those who need to receive a service, to have the opportunity to discuss and find out what the need for their children. Next slide, please. And then we have doing our screening and data collection as well. So like I mentioned earlier, we use the digital platform called a ComCare app to recording all the data. So all the children that we get screened, we have the screening module that you can see in the arrow at the top. We call child screening in the yellow. So VAG and CDL they will using this module, and then they record while they do screening. So it is able to see how many children that we have screened and how many children that we identify. Then we have the specialist approval module, referral module. So this one, while we ensure that the children have identified a delay or disability, then it will be approved by specialists, then we refer. After that, we have the last module we call interventionist care plan module. It is a kind of providing intervention at home or follow-up or something. So we record how or what services that the children have receiving. So next slide, please. So this data, we have the flow. Yeah, you can see in the, I may don't have time much to explain about this. So it is, we make sure that we have the capture all the information or data, and we have the flow that we supported our user, especially our village health support group and a community leader. They know how to record it into the system. Next slide, please. And that is the kind of screening that I mentioned earlier. We integrate our tool into the tablet. So our village health support group and community leader, they can use screening throughout the tablet without using the paperwork. Next slide, please. That is our last strategy to sustain our activity. As you know that for the activity, it may be phased out in future while the project ended. So what we do is we try to provide a sustainability. We have a core group who can provide capacity building on the screening tool to any of agency or institution that they want to learn about the screening. So we have the core group, that CDMAT core group, that can provide the training. And then another second, we try to strengthen the collaboration with the government. So we supported the Kampong Thom Physical Rehabilitation Center. So before this center, they provide like physical rehab to children or to the adult with disability, but they're not focusing on providing the services to children under 5 years old, especially those who have developmental delay or disability. So what we are doing in our project, we provide capacity building to this rehabilitation center so that they can provide services to our children under 5 as well. And another thing is we leverage the use of our tool from the ComCare app to any of agency like Ministry of Social Affairs or Ministry of Health. So we will hand over, or we will give, I can say in easily, we can give this digital platform to the existing government data management system. In case they want to using this tool, then we can integrate this digital platform into their system. Next slide, please. So I think it's all from us, and you can see we have the QR code from our Facebook page as well. So if you want to know further information about our activity in Cambodia, you also can receive the information, or other activity from our Facebook page. So thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we have several more important pieces of the agenda, so we'll just very quickly do a few of the burning questions, and then if with thanks to you and Claire for answering and sharing resources in the chat box. Thank you to everybody who's participating. So there's a question of, are there any opportunities for children with disabilities in this program to interact or play with children who do not have disabilities? And also, do you do any mobilization or advocacy work inside of mainstream early childhood centers? And then related, lots of great interest, wonderful interest in the tools that you're using. Sue asked, can you indicate who the specialists are who give approval following screening? Thank you.
Yeah, so of course we have the play activity by we call inclusive play that we integrate the play during the our caregiver session, while we provide the caregiver session to the caregiver from the nurturing care session. So we also, we have one group activity, play activity for the children. Those children can be the children without disability or the children with disability. They are able to integrate the playing together. And we have our village health support group who have trained on what we call playing basket or something like that. So they coordinate the play with those children. Another thing, during we conduct the peer support group meeting, that children with disability who come along with their caregiver that come for the peer support group, we also separate other children activity that have sometimes our interventionists, they to support the children for positioning or something. Then we encourage one member of the children who have disabilities. So during the peer support group, we engage the family to come together, the parent to come together. So sometimes the wife in the session, in the peer support group meeting, and the husband can come to see what the children with disability playing, so they can see what our specialist doing some sort of activity with their children. Then we educate the husband to see, okay, you can do like this, the position support the child or something like that. So we do those kind of things. For the specialist approval, we have like those also with, I have me also in the group we call care support team. So care support team, we have me as a disability and social inclusive specialist. We have the interventionist, and we have a physiotherapy. So we work at the interdisciplinary team to see the detailed information of the children, and then we thought out these children may refer to some specialists, or these children need a home intervention. Yeah. Do I
Thank
answer?
Thank you so very much. Absolutely. Please, let's continue the conversation in the chat box, and thanks to everybody. You can see that there's quite a bit of discussion and questions. We'll keep doing that as well. Please, everybody, continue sharing ideas and your advocacy and your work. Thank you so much to our colleagues for sharing. And now we would love to welcome the next presenter from eKitabu, Leah Nguata, the Research and Training Manager. And thank you especially for joining us today to talk about this exciting project on building teachers' capacity and developing a cadre of inclusive education champions through community interventions. Welcome, and over to you, Leah.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Nguata. At eKitabu, I support in training and research, and I'm very honored to be here to discuss about our Jifunze Uelewe partnership with RTI. And this project is supported by USAID. And the project aim was to build teachers' capacity and develop a cadre of inclusive education champions through community interventions. And I would like us to go to the next slide, please. So in this presentation, I'm going to share a little bit about the background of the project, the concept behind it, the methodology that we used. We will also share some maybe profiles from a few of the Mabingwa or the champions, and then show you the results to date and our next steps. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have been working with Jifunze Uelewe, that is the RTI in Tanzania, since 2019 in different activities. And we have been focusing on inclusive education, teacher professional development, where we train the teachers on how to teach in an inclusive classroom. And here we also train them how to use accessible teaching and learning materials, and also the methods in which they can use other tools to assess the language and literacy for children with disabilities. But particularly in this presentation, I'm going to share more about the teacher training and that we have done in different regions and what the outcome has been and what we plan to do in the next activities. Next slide, please. So at eKitabu, we have a few things that guide our theory of change. And so mostly we look at how we learn together as a company or as an organization. And we focus on the reach, that is where we engage with our partners, like the way we have engaged with RTI, TZ. And then we provide also assistive devices to learners with disabilities and also accessible digital content. We also develop the software that is able to host the accessible digital content so that each and everyone that we hope to reach is able to access the materials. We also focus a lot on the utilization of the accessible teaching and learning materials, and that is why we offer the training. Then we also consider the time that we spend with our partners or even the people we work with by building relationships for results in the whole system. Also, we look at the inclusivity of the assessment tools that we use. That, for example, if we have learners with disabilities, we want to make sure that even the assessment materials are usable for them and also they are accessible to them. Then also we think about sustainability of these initiatives through the support in the process within and also beyond the project. Next slide, please. So what do we train on? So we train the teachers on inclusive education. We also train on the universal design for learning, because this is where we look at not the learner, not at the disability, but also at the different learning styles that our learners have. And then we try to train the teachers on even how to design instruction or even to lesson plan using the universal design for learning. We also train our participants on how to use assistive devices, for example, the refreshable braille device, which we use the Orbit reader for our learners or trainees who are blind or of low vision. And we also train on social emotional learning. Next slide, please. So what method do we use to ensure that we achieve the cadre of teachers, all the champions? So at the beginning, we start by inviting our participants into an in-person training. And this one is usually like an awareness training. So they come together, we offer the training, but we believe that at this point, they may not be able to learn enough for them to go and implement in the field. So we do not stop at the first training. So that one, we call it an initiation or an awareness stage. And we call these teachers our level 1 teachers. This means that they will need support for them to continue to learn throughout the process in the schools. And so we continue to support them when they go back to school in the implementation part. So during that time, we support them through phone calls, WhatsApp, and also we do what we call a teacher catch-up. This is to be able to know where are the teachers at and what support do they need. So the teachers are able to move from now level 1 to level 2, and they become implementers. They are able to apply the universal design for learning principles in teaching and learning. When the teachers are now able to do that in their individual classes, then we also continue supporting them so that they can grow and they can also be able to mentor other teachers. Meaning that now the teacher who has gone beyond now implementing in their own classes, then we are able now to move those teachers to a leadership position where they can offer mentorship to other teachers, and they can also be able to now mentor and support other teachers to do whatever they have been doing in their independent classes. Next slide, please. So far, we work with different countries besides Tanzania, and so far we've been able to train 18 teachers in Rwanda. That was in partnership with ACR, GCDs, and Restricted. Then also we have trained 250 teachers in Kenya with different partners such as Humanity and Inclusion. Then we have in Tanzania, we have trained a total of 240 teachers and under the partnership with RTI, Jifunze Uelewe project. Next slide, please. Okay, now for the case of Tanzania, we have been able to train in different regions, and you can see the numbers. So the regions are Pemba, Ugunja, Vuma, Iringa, Mtwara, Morogoro, Arusha, and also Zanzibar. So these are the regions in which we have been able to reach so far. Next slide, please. Now, for the cadre or the teachers who we've been able to move from level 1 up to level 3. So we started with 240 teachers. And after the support where we would make calls, provide them with materials, do the teacher connect, we had a number of teachers moving to level 3. So currently we have 115 teachers still at level 1, whom we are continually supporting. Then we have 64 teachers at level 2, and we have 61 teachers at level 3, and these ones, we call them our teacher champions, and they are the ones that are continuing to support other teachers in different schools and in different regions, so that we can reach out to as many teachers as possible. Next slide, please. So we were able to also get some feedback from different teachers about their experience or what has changed since the time they engaged in our training. And I would like to share some few feedback from a few of the teacher champions. Next slide, please. So the first teacher that we can see here, she's called Teacher Awena. Teacher Awena is a Kiswahili and English teacher who teaches at Kisiwandui Primary School. This is in Zanzibar. So this teacher is also a teacher who is blind. And this is what she had to say about the training. The teacher professional development training was an eye-opener for me. I learned the most simple methods of teaching students with different learning and understanding disabilities. So that is one example of a teacher who has benefited from the training. And then we go to the next slide, please, and hear from another teacher. This is Teacher Bethel. You can see these are two teachers also who are blind. And the two teachers are from a school called Kikalakala Primary School in Morogoro in Tanzania. And this is what she had to say. The digital content on devices and training that we received has simplified my work, helping children with and without disabilities in my school. At least it has reduced the burden I had at the beginning. Next slide, please. Then we have teacher Nora, and you can see teacher Nora in this photo. She is making a presentation during one of our trainings. Teacher Nora also is a teacher in Tanzania. She teaches in Changarawe Primary in Morogoro district. And she said that during the teacher professional development activities, I learned key functions of the Orbit reader. I also learned how to use the device to teach learners with visual impairments in my school, and also transcribe Braille words once connected to a computer. So you can see amongst all the things that we teach, besides the universal design for learning, we also want the teachers to be able to extend the knowledge that they have acquired from the training sessions and be able to support the learner so that also the learner benefits in the whole process. So you can see the benefit has been both for the teacher and also for the learners. Next slide, please. So our next steps is that we have been connecting teacher champions with other teachers in different regions, and this one has helped form small groups of practice. Also, the teacher champions will be able to support other teachers, and also they report on what the needs are on a weekly basis. So we make calls, we connect with them, and they tell us what the needs are. And therefore, we have been able to plan on how we develop shareable and accessible videos on inclusive education best practices to support the teacher champions as they do their work in the field. Also, because there are also inclusive education training manuals out there from RTI that they use, we have also been looking at maybe different ways in which we could reinforce the training manuals. Next slide, please. So I would like you to see some of the work that we do, because as much as we are training the teachers on how to utilize the accessible digital content, it is because that is part of the work that we do to make sure that our content is accessible for all, that is learners with and without disabilities, including those who are deaf. And as you will see in this video, we also have some videos where they are interactive, or we have the videos where the learners can engage in play. And so please click the video for us to see what these learners are doing.
This is fantastic. And I wonder is it possible to share the link to the video so that others would be able to review these materials as well?
That's okay. I will share the link for the materials and the videos. And thank you so much for listening. It's been awesome presenting.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. There's so much interest. And, you know, as we know, there's a need to scale not just quickly, but with quality, right, on inclusive education and early childhood topics. And so you have a couple of really fantastic comments and questions. You know, for example, one of your slides mentioned some work across 3 different countries, but with this, do you see any opportunity for this training to be extended? For example, thank you to Karina James for asking, to the Caribbean. And then also, thank you to colleagues in Nigeria for sharing their experience in terms of the real need to make sure that there's stronger educational service delivery support for children in public primary school, and for screening of children with disabilities and increased capacity. And absolutely, we will share all of these slides with everybody, as well as the recording. Thank you to Joel for sharing in Tanzania. The big challenge for inclusive education for children with disabilities is access to early childhood education because of the poverty level of families, perceptions of community about disabled children, the stigma that's been mentioned. What other activities have you done or would you recommend in terms of interventions? So if you have suggestions and ideas, on those fronts, please do come in. Over back to you, Leah, and we encourage everybody to continue sharing ideas in the chat box as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I have seen the question on the early childhood education for learners with disabilities. From our work, we've not worked a lot with the early childhood education, but it would be very interesting to also share what we have done in Kenya on early childhood education, and possibly this would also help in finding interventions for learners with disabilities at early childhood education level. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And absolutely, these topics are all very connected. And so thank you to everybody who's continuing to share, and let's keep doing that. I think all of the resources that you mentioned, Leah, please, if it's possible, to share any of them. There's real interest as well, and we'd be glad to include them with follow-up after the conversation today. And yeah, please, we're so grateful to all of you for your amazing work. And if our colleague from the GCE Secretariat is able to come in, we're really excited to welcome Tendaishe Tlou, or the Learning Officer at the GCE, or the Global Campaign for Education Secretariat. Perfect. Thank you so much. We can see your video, and welcome. We're excited that there is an opportunity. Many of you who are members of the GCE movement might have been involved in the strategic plan input and process at the last World Assembly as well. And all are invited. This community of practice and learning community is open for everyone. And you know, has over 500 participants, and is growing in a strong way thanks to all of you. So we're really excited and grateful to our colleagues who have been building off of this fantastic work and thinking about ways to grow not just the inclusive education and early childhood community of practice, but the community of practice that the GCE Secretariat and partners around the world have been working on related topics as well. So we're excited to hear about some new ideas to make sure that we can move into this new phase to continue advocating and sharing together, as we've heard just today, how absolutely vital and critical that is, and then also building an even stronger learning community. Over to you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for making time to join us today. My name is Tendai, and I'm joining from Zimbabwe. I'm part of the GCE Secretariat, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to present to you this new initiative that we have. Please allow me to switch off my my video because my bandwidth is a bit unstable. Yes, so as Jennifer has mentioned earlier on, we are working on a project generally to come up with a learning knowledge exchange and learning structure. And one of the key interventions that we have adopted in the past few months, what we call learning communities. Generally, they are almost the same with a community of practice, but in recent years, the GCE has managed to come up with new terms and introduce the term learning community to replace the community of practice, so to ensure that there's continuous learning, engagement, and joint advocacy through these platforms. So generally, learning communities are one of the practical knowledge exchange and learning spaces which were originally derived from the community of practice across the GCE movement. So learning communities, virtual platforms that bring together diverse stakeholders from the GCE membership and external partners who share the interest and passion for collaborating and taking joint actions in addressing thematic issues of concern by interacting on an ongoing basis. So but generally, the learning communities are established to serve the following purpose. The first one is to provide multi-stakeholder and multi-purpose platforms where members of different constituencies with diverse expertise engage, collaborate, and share ideas and innovative practices around common topics. Then secondly, the learning communities are meant to promote thematic discussions and sharing of information, knowledge and resources on GC key advocacy and campaigning priorities. Then lastly, they are meant to respond to the emerging thematic learning needs and advocacy advocacy needs amongst the GC movement. So in recent months and last year, the GC Secretariat has been quite critical in implementing about 4 learning communities. The first one being the one on education and emergencies. The second one being the one on education financing. The third one being the youth and student engagement. Then the fourth one being gender. So most recently, we also had a conversation with the GC in US, and we came to an agreement that the GC US will hand over the IEC learning community to the GCE Secretariat, so that we incorporate this learning community into the bigger picture and the bigger agenda of the GCE, and also be able to reach to other education partners and stakeholders, which the current COP might not be able to reach. So this agreement was reached, and in the process we will be expanding the capacity and reach of the IEC, the learning community, which will be coordinated alongside the other 4 platforms, which I've just mentioned above. So generally, what I'm going to try to do is just to run through the process set to coordinate the learning communities and the subtopics that will also be discussed. This will be followed also by the indication of tools and platforms to be used. Then we'll cross over to the composition and the membership of the learning community. Then lastly, we'll also touch on the indicative plan for annual reviews and updates of the learning community. So just to cross over to the first item, specifically on the key engagement topics and platforms. So generally, what we are going to try to do is we are still proposing. We haven't yet concluded the processes around the establishment of this learning community. So we are generally proposing about 4 topics at the moment, which include disability inclusion, inclusion of historically excluded populations and groups, transformative education, and we are also open to members and partners also suggesting other subtopics that we can actually discuss under this learning community. So the flow will be open, and even our communications will be open, so that you can also engage us and also tell us what you think can be the way forward. Then going forward, the activities of this learning community will be delivered through an interconnected process that makes use of accessible online platforms and tools to enable the community of members to interact on an ongoing basis. So from what we have envisaged at the moment, we mainly have 3 main tools and platforms that we think can be quite useful for this learning community. The first one being the Learning Hub. At the moment, we are reconfiguring it, and it's not accessible, but what I think it will be ready in the next few weeks. And what we think that the Learning Hub will be serving is that it will be an information repository for resources and also practices, and creation of an online discussion page. So the idea that we have is is that we specifically created a section for the IEC learning community on the Learning Hub, where members can actually post their ideas, where they can also have discussions online and exchange ideas on that platform. And also, for example, what Laeek was saying earlier on, that there's need for us to capitalize on technology so that we can also reach more people. We also facilitate the deposition of material such as policy briefs, learning briefs on that platform, so that other members can also access some materials and tools and use in their own spaces. Then the second one is obviously the online meetings and the webinars that we have been having for the past few years. Here we are proposing that we have quarterly webinars rather than bi-monthly webinars, so that we have ample time to plan and also to engage each other in terms of the planning processes and also the other administrative processes which the GC will be conducting in South Africa. Then after the learning, the webinars, we also be developing learning briefs, which will also be disseminated via the Learning Hub and also other platforms such as the website, social media platforms of the GCE, so that other members can also access that. Then we'll also be sharing discussion materials through this platform. Then finally, what we envisage going forward is that after having had these learning processes and platforms, we look forward to having joint advocacy actions where members can actually work together and have joint advocacy actions on IEC, then contributions to campaigning actions, so that we see our members and our partners actually using the information that they will have derived from the learning platforms to actually inform their campaigning actions in different parts of the world. Then moving over to the composition and membership. Generally here we are trying to come up with a new idea which might actually be replacing the idea of the co-chairing, where we'll be introducing the idea of the technical advisory group. This also will be set up by the Secretariat and will be coordinated by the Secretariat. So basically, what we think is the way forward is that we establish the advisory group composed of representatives from up to 12 coalitions, organizations with inclusive education and early childhood education priorities as part of their work and advocacy.